the California legislature is pushing a new law that really should scare people. It essentially bans the sale of particular books. I am not kidding. This is something that is happening in the state of California. So according to David French over at National Review, Assembly Bill 2943 would make it an unlawful business practice to engage in a transaction intended to result or that results in the sale or lease of goods or services to any consumer that advertise, offer to engage in, or do engage in sexual orientation change efforts with an individual. The bill then defines sexual orientations change efforts as any practice that seeks to change an individual's sexual orientation. This includes efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions, or to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings toward individuals of the same sex. Okay, this is insane. I'm sorry, this is insane. This bill is totally crazy. It doesn't matter whether you believe that conversion therapy works. I think the evidence on that is at best mixed and leaning very strongly toward no. But that does not mean that you shouldn't be able to read a book about how to fight particular urges or that urge you to behave in certain ways, right? The entire religious worldview is that you have lots of urges, right? We all have lots of urges, and a lot of those urges are bad for you, and you should resist those urges as much as possible. But under California law, such books could be banned in the state of California. Like, really. And even worse, it says it includes efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions. So in other words, if I have a 3-year-old kid, and that 3-year-old kid is expressing that they want to be the opposite sex, I can't take that kid to a therapist who is going to who's going to try to make sure that my kid's feelings of gender disorientation are alleviated. I don't have the ability to do that in the state of California. How in the world is that constitutional? The answer is it's not constitutional. The answer is also that folks on the left in California don't care. So when we talk about tyranny coming in the guise of a happy face, well, this is what we're talking about. The folks on the left in California suggesting, of course, that gender expression is innately baked into the cake, that sexual orientation is innately baked into the cake, and that any attempt by anyone to say any different should be illegal in the state of California is fully crazy and fully violative of First Amendment basic freedoms. It's also not true. Okay, it's also not true. Human behavior changes on a regular basis. Now, I'm not talking about your desires. Your desires may not be changeable, but it is a fact that when it comes to, for example, gender expression, 80% of all kids who identify as cross-gender when they are young grow out of it by the time they are teenagers. And you're now telling me that I have to reinforce that at the state level, and that if I don't, the state is going to sue me? The state is going to punish me? And remember, this isn't just seeking the services of a psychiatrist. This is if I even buy a book about this. If Barnes & Noble carries a book about how to deal with a child who's suffering from gender dysphoria, and that book suggests that you don't have hormone treatment or humor it, that this may actually be a violation of California state law. I mean, this is insane. It's totally crazy. As David French writes, to take one example, large numbers of children who exhibit gender dysphoria eventually desist. Their dysphoria resolves itself as they grow older. Indeed, there's serious research indicating that this is the most likely outcome for a child with gender dysphoria. But under AB 2943, the very act of communicating this truthful and indeed hopeful message could very well lead to legal jeopardy. Not just that, you can see a world in which California goes even further than this and starts taking children out of homes. If you're a parent who says, listen, my little girl is not a little boy, no matter what she says, then you could see the state saying you are now engaging in child endangerment. I cannot imagine the Supreme Court of the United States would uphold this law. I just can't imagine it. Now, maybe a couple of the justices would try to uphold the law, some of the more radical justices, but I just can't imagine that the Supreme Court would say this doesn't violate the First Amendment. It very, very obviously violates the First Amendment. It has already passed through 2 committees by 8-2 and 8-1 margins. It may come up for an assembly vote this week. And of course, this is the future of California is the future of the left. So if you wonder why folks on the right are so unwilling to make bargains with folks on the left about social issues, this is the reason. Because social leftists are interested in not only changing minds, but enforcing that change on people from above using the power of government. I mean, this is truly evil stuff. Suggesting to people they shouldn't be able to buy books they want to buy, suggesting to people that they shouldn't be able to bring kids to the therapist they want to bring kids to, is just insane and evil. It really is. And the fact that California is pursuing it demonstrates how crazy the left has gone on social issues particularly.